Hello, this is Charlotte from my virtual marketing assistant, and today I'm going to talk you through how I do a quick photo edit in Lightroom Mobile. Now this is the free version of Lightroom Mobile that I'm going to be demoing, so I've not logged in with my photographer subscription and it's all unpaid, so anyone can download and access this app for free. And I'm just going to show you the basic steps I would take to take a JPEG image that I've got straight from the camera and upload it to social media. So the first thing I do is crop it. For example, this is going on Instagram, so I've cropped it square. We'll select a crop that I think looks quite nice. It's all about composition, what looks good. Sometimes you crop in a bit closer on your subject. I'm just straightening up there, getting the dog's face nice and central. And then another tool you can use is the straighten tool, which you can see the angle changing there to make things that should be straight, like the wall in the background, that very obviously should be vertical, just to straighten that up so it looks right. Now once I've done that, I've got that how it's going to look at the end, I can move on to the light and tweak the exposure slightly. This image obviously needed brightening up because the dog's very dark, so to bring out the dog I'll also bring up the shadows, and by doing that it brings out a lot of the detail in the darker areas of the image. However, sometimes when you increase the exposure too much, you can get blown out highlights, so by bringing the highlights down in this case, I've stopped that from happening and kept a nice even exposure. Next thing I look at is the colour. So I'll do the white balance. Usually I'll just do an auto white balance, see what that comes out with. I quite like the look of this, but I think it's a little bit green for my taste. I've just taken the tint down slightly. You can change it to suit your taste. Vibrance and saturation can also be tweaked, depending on the look of the image you're going for. This image is quite subtle, so I'm just going to bring the saturation down a little bit. As you can see, if you take it up a lot, it looks a bit crazy. So we're just going to subtly bring that down slightly. And another reason to do that is if you use an effect called dehaze, which I'm about to show you, that can increase saturation as well. So if you're going to use dehaze, which is really good for creating nice punchy images, just bring your saturation down a touch so you don't get too oversaturated in your colours. You can also tweak the clarity. Sometimes you can go a bit overboard on this. I don't usually add a lot of clarity to my images, and a little bit of texture there just adds a little bit more detail in the image. But again, play around with those. Depending on the image, it might need it. For example, an image with lacking a bit of contrast will really benefit from the clarity adjustment. And some of the finishing touches I do is just to sharpen the image, especially for social media. It just keeps a nice, clean, sharp image. Don't take the slider too far to the right because it can start to look a bit weird. I tend to find between about 30 and 50 works quite well. And then by masking, it just concentrates the sharpening on the areas of the image that have detail, like the dog's face, for example, and doesn't sharpen the background. And finally, just a couple of last tweaks. It's always good to turn on lens correction. If your camera lens is in the database, then Lightroom will automatically apply lens correction, which can correct distortion and some of the funky things that happen with different camera lenses. And that's it. So that image is now finished. I'm just going to export it now. This is where you can export with all different sizes and file formats. For general social media use, for Instagram, Facebook, I'll usually export a JPEG, 80% quality to reduce the file size, and then 1080 for the size of the image, and that's the optimal size for Instagram. And there we go, that image is all done. I'm ready to upload. I hope you found this helpful. There's a bit more information in our latest blog. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a message.